Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're here. We're back. We've just reached another international break where we've just seen Tottenham Hotspur pick up, in the dying seconds, be denied victory against Manchester United in a 2-2 draw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Thomas Frank, seconds away from his statement Premier League home victory, which really, he's lacked to date so far, of course. Just that only home win in the Premier League against Burnley. Look, it was a better second half display from Spurs, but it is now nearly 3 months since Tottenham have won at home in the Premier League. Got to be honest, for me, wrong 11 picked from the start. Everything Frank did in terms of the substitutions worked, but the argument is, why didn't it start that way? On this edition of Last Word on Spurs, we're joined by the wonderful broadcaster extraordinaire Russ Williams. We're joined by TJ Ramini, and we're joined by Luke from Spotlight on Spurs. Guys out there, if you can like, hype, subscribe, that will be greatly appreciated. If you want to get involved in the conversation in the live show, you can do. If you hit that subscribe button, that allows you to enter in the chat and you can converse and talk and debate with everybody during the show being live. If you're with us for the very first time, you can find us. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify. We are across all major audio platforms. One important thing I must say before we bring in the match facts and stats and these wonderful gentlemen, I think from now on the basis of that game, surely Udogie, Odegaard, Xavi have got to be starting home games. I feel like for a lot of fans out there, in the end, it feels like a loss, despite the fact it would have honestly been a smash and grab victory. I don't even get away from that. We are going to discuss where we are under Thomas Frank, how we are feeling so far about the Dane. Are we convinced from what we've seen as we do go into what will be the business side of the season? But as we know, some critical fixtures to come in the next phase of the block for Tottenham. Of course, no shorter or smaller than Arsenal on the horizon, then PSG, Fulham at home. Then we roll into, of course, Newcastle away, Brentford at home. In that busy Christmas period. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of debate to have in terms of the Dane and where he's taking us to. Just one other thing before I do bring in the match facts and the stats. Despite Thomas Frank telling us that Kalamorani coming off wasn't a bad thing, we have heard some news in the last couple of hours that he was forced off with a jaw injury and he's understood to be due to undergo a scan on Sunday. So Kalamorani could be the latest Tottenham player potentially, out for a period. We'll have to wait and see. Kalamorani, like I say, at the moment, we understand, due to undergo a scan on Sunday to determine where he is at. Let's bring you in those match facts and the stats from the game before we bring in these wonderful gents. It finished Tottenham 2, Manchester United 2, Tottenham 10 shots to Manchester United's 5. I will remind you, for those that were unaware, Tottenham, not a single shot on target, and then we had to wait until after the 50th minute to get one. Tottenham, 4 shots on target during the game to Manchester United's 2. Tottenham had 6 shots inside the United box to United's 5. Tottenham, 17 touches in the United box in comparison to United just edging that stat, 19. That maybe tells you what quite a crazy game or a boring game it was really until the final 20 minutes livened it up. Tottenham, the busier of the two sides on the tackling front, 26-20. Clearance-wise, United, the busier of the two sides, 22-18. Tottenham, they had more corners in the game, 5-3. Tottenham also edged possession, 55% to 45%. And Tottenham on the XG, 1.01 to Manchester United, 0.99. I think it's worth me bringing to your attention, Tottenham have now scored 19 goals from 12.95 XG this season. Make off that stat what you will. Just a couple of things I will just say finally before I bring the guys in here. Will Richarlison please keep his shirt on? Because whenever Richarlison keeps his or takes his shirt off during a celebration, we can never seem to hold on to a lead or go in to win a game. And also, just this last thing I've got to say, Matthijs De Ligt, to have the audacity to cup your ear when he's been single-handedly responsible for our 2 greatest ever European nights in our modern history. Sit down, please, sir. Let me come to broadcast extraordinaire Russ Williams to kick us off. Russ, look, probably an incredible ending to the game for the neutral. There was an argument that in the dying seconds, Frank Sub turned the game around, but the points were shared. Ironically, Wilson Odobert created the most chances free on the pitch and was the only player to create more than Destiny Udogie. 2 players who actually had to come onto the field and not start the game, which is, again, another direct indication maybe we didn't get the lineup right. And I think you have to feel now Odobert, Udogie must start for Spurs moving forward. But you've got to be absolutely gutted to not be winning it from there at the end, given the fact United, they had 10 men on the pitch. Russ, your thoughts on the game first before we get into Thomas Frank?
We'll come on, I know, a little bit later to the starting 11 and what we made of that. But I can tell you, Rick, from what you've said, I would be in agreement with you that I thought it was a rather peculiar starting 11. But anyway, there we go. I mean, I wrote down my feelings watching the game today: frustration, elation, bit of positivity there, concern, bewilderment, realization. And the one that I've underlined about 3 times is, as a club, we have a continuing mentality problem. And one of the few occasions that I could think where we didn't have a mentality problem was actually when we beat United to win the Europa League. Somehow we managed to hold on. But today, the equaliser was absolutely inexcusable, to be honest with you. But I think, I felt that we were watching 2 pretty average teams. Make no mistake about it, Manchester United aren't Copenhagen. They're a little bit better than that. They've had a bit of a run under Amorim. We've got a manager who is trying to still find his way managing a big club in the Premier League and all the things that go with that, from expectation to style of play. And I personally won't judge Thomas Frank until he's got a full deck of cards. In other words, he's got the likes of Mathys and Kulusevski and co back and available, and maybe brings in a couple more. But not a great game. For many people, I think it was a bit like watching paint dry. And second half, I thought we performed a lot better. United dealt with us pretty easily in the first half. And in fact, last 15 minutes of the first half, well and truly, we're controlling us. We didn't look as though we were going to do anything. And, things that stuck out to me, apart from the starting 11 and what you've said about Udogie, for example, which I think is a really good point. Lolo is the only player who is capable of passing in midfield. And who needs the passes? Xavi Simons needs the passes for him to do his work. Having said that, I didn't think he did too badly today, but overall, going forward, we are not a team that plays with any degree of confidence regularly. And I think a lot of that has got to do with the quality of the front 3. And I didn't think the Richarlison, Brennan Johnson and Kolo Muani, even if, Richarlison and Muani did shift positions occasionally, particularly in the first half, I just don't think that they're dangerous enough. I think Brennan, for all the good he's done for the club, is a little bit lightweight physically. Richarlison, credit to him for getting his head for the goal. But generally, he has not been good at all. And word is that really he wants to be out. I mean, it is incredible that only Tottenham can sign a Brazilian number 9 that is of the standard of Richarlison, a completely different player to what he even was at Everton. And I really think that up front is a major, major problem. The other cause of concern for me, finally, I don't want to go on, is Vicario, as good a shot stopper as he is. I've spoken about it on the show before numerous times. Really good goalkeepers can, command the box, grab the ball, put themselves in danger. And I just don't see that. And I think the club have got a decision to make. If they're serious about building on the trophy that we won last season, that's certainly a position, along with a clinical top striker, that they absolutely have got to look at. But I don't think Thomas Frank's starting 11 really tactically was that bright, really. I'll be interested to hear what what he says when we hear some of the clips. But, underwhelming really would be another word. But at least we haven't lost Rick going into an international break. So thank heavens for small mercies. But I'm still with Frank. I'm not sort of the Frank out brigade who I saw on social media today. And I'm sure we've got a lot watching and listening who just are frustrated. And I think that's what it comes down to. Give him a full deck and then we can judge him properly.
You talk about the players, not brain-wise, right? Just to confirm.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think he's a very smart bloke, and I think
I agree.
I think he knew everybody. When he came into the club, he wasn't coming into some sort of Shangri-La of football because it doesn't exist in N17 at the moment. But I think we still have to stick with it. We can't do this chopping and changing. We've got same owners, but a new setup. It's going to be interesting to see what they try and do in January. Next summer is going to be really, really important. And we're just going to see if they actually put their money where their mouths appear to be. But at the moment, I think we're in the game where we get a Copenhagen performance this season, and then we'll have a Bournemouth, and then we'll have a sort of Man United at home performance. And, I think we just got to be patient. And it's bloody awful because I don't want to be patient. I want to be pushing on. But at the moment, it doesn't seem possible with the personnel we've got.
It comes back to that point again. It's that management of 2 games per week, right? And then just to be very, very clear, Spurs are yet to lose a game, the second game at home when they have been playing a European midweek fixture. We'll take small things at the moment in terms of comforts. We will. Luke will bring you and then we'll go to Tej. Look, I mean, as we've said in the show already, Spurs did start poorly. They steadily improved in the second half of the game, eventually going 2-1 up. I think, look, I said it in my intro. I think it would have been smash and grab should we have hung on. We didn't. There'd be an argument to say 2-2 is a fair result. United better in the first half, Spurs in the second. There'll be lots for Frank to take from that game. Odegaard has had a really good week. A doggy, so crucial on the left. I want to try and say it's a result of building at home, but just at the moment, we can't seem to get a win at home in the Premier League. I know many will mention Burnley, but Burnley are a team that's just come up again from the Championship. The home form is concerned. Like I said, just one win there and, all season in the Premier League and nearly 3 months since we won at home. It's a massive, massive problem. Luke, we'll come on to Frank and more in general about where we are with him. But what did you make of the game itself for you?
Yeah, I think my statement at this moment in time for the season is context is key, right? Because there is so many different facets to the club, but also even just this game. So after 50 minutes, if you'd have given me a draw, I would have absolutely spit your hand off for it because of the way the performance was going and what it was looking like. You then take the lead and you expecting to win. You obviously you lose it in the last minute. And then you'll have some fans that will say, well, it's a draw, we didn't lose. You'll have some say, well, it's another bad performance, we're not creating enough. But there has to be some sort of context to all of this sort of stuff. Like it's a difficult game. United are not. I completely agree with Russ. I don't think either team is a top 4 team. I don't think that we're at the pinnacle of our powers either side. I feel like United were very much there for the taking, and a good side would have beaten them. But it was a real strange game, and again we've touched on it a little bit, and we'll go into more detail. The lineup was a bit strange for me. It's almost like people already have conclusions and then just fit things that make sense to that conclusion, like celebrating the changes. As you said in the intro, maybe they should have just been there from the start. You can't celebrate what they've rectified the problem that you could have just had it from the very start. So it was a bit of a strange decision. That's exactly how I summed up the lineup when I put a tweet out earlier. I just said interesting lineup. That I'm not sure why that was the case. He obviously got quite a bit of criticism for doing the Bentancur Palhinha combination in midfield consistently. You'd expect that against the better teams, you kind of expected them to be the midfield. So for him to then change it for this game, it kind of felt a little bit peculiar. Obviously, we've already mentioned you've got the international break coming up. So again, I always try to look at the positives and try to be as fair as possible. I think there were some positives in there for sure, but there has to be a turning point. And for me, Spurs, no matter who is in charge, no matter what players we have, Spurs are always at their best when they're pressing, they're front-footed, and they're attacking. Because even if we've got 5 defenders, we've got 4 defensive midfielders, I still don't fancy us to keep clean sheets. It's just like, I think Spurs are a club, that's what we need. And I've said this for years, like to friends that are Chelsea fans, Arsenal fans, the way we play, the intensity we play at means so much to Spurs fans. And whether that's a positive or a negative, that's entirely for everyone to have their own opinion. But that is the way that Spurs should be playing football, and I think that's why the frustrations you heard at halftime. There were some sections of the fan base that were booing, and I think that is the intensity that we need to play at needs to increase by a big amount. Where what the players are used to, especially after winning that trophy. I said it on the show earlier on this week. There's a benchmark there, and that's where we need to set them benchmarks and say this is the minimum that we needed. And I thought Frank coming in, the minimum that we would get every game is determination, hard work, physicality, strength, and we're getting some of them, but we're not getting it consistently enough in my eyes.
Yeah, I got to say, Luke, I think it was some very, very fair points made there. And I think some very common sense points as well made there for certain on what you've just said there. To bring you in, Spurs so close to just a second home win in the Premier League, which I think, look, for Thomas Frank, it would have felt huge. And the squad and the players on the pitch, really, as we've said, I know you're going to probably come onto it in your intro because you've been saying to me in the green room, they're 10 men on the pitch and we just simply threw it away. I mean, maybe we got emotional after Richarlison scored. And I said that point that he just needs to keep that shirt on because we just can't seem to get a result to win a game coming back from behind to go in front when Richarlison takes that bloody shirt off. But look, you can argue positive to see them come back, but criminal, I thought, to let it get away from us with De Ligt at the back post unmarked. Sesko going off injured. I mean, look, the positives are Mathys Tel, Udogie, all made a big difference off the bench. Tej, what were your takeaways from that 2-2 draw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium?
Well, let me preface everything that I'm going to say with I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to watch that. Just contextually.
AM, just to be clear, AM, not PM. AM,
yeah, 4:30 in the morning to watch that game. I said, when we were chatting on X, I posted, this was a pretty lackluster game from 2 bang average teams. United are still not a team that I have any kind of reservations about, or I feel like, I understand the weight of that badge and the history of that club, but there's only so many years one can trade on history. At some point, that needs to manifest itself into something physical. And they were certainly there for the taking today. Thank you, mate. Yeah, absolute dedication. Ironically, right, we're going to get into that. So I think another real positive that again is pragmatic and realistic without wanting to just be rose-colored spectacles. I was very pleased with what I saw from Xavi today. He earned his starting position, and it looked like that had really made a difference. I thought the Copenhagen was exactly the game that he needed. And he just seemed much more self-assured. I was critical of him early on, just kind of not showing up and demanding the ball. I understand he's not a James Maddison type player, but you can always find those spaces within the lines. Of course, to Russ's point, he has to receive those forward passes in order to be effective within those lines. But I was pleased with what I saw for him today. I was happy for him. He's a young man, and I thought that he was effective, which was excellent. Again, another positive was I'm glad that Thomas Frank didn't play the double pivot. We didn't start with Palhinha and with Bentancur. It was. I thought Sarr was disappointing today. Again, I think that's a clear-cut opportunity. If your manager is not going to say, okay, I'm going to start 2 defensive midfielders, I'm going to give a slightly more creative, or perhaps, not really sure what Sarr is. Is he a number 8? Is he a number 6? I'm not really sure. He's a very, very talented player. He can shoot. He can dribble. He looked a little frail today, which was, I thought, uncharacteristic for him. But listen, ultimately, this sport is about points on the board. Again, to Luke's point, at 50 minutes, at 80 minutes, we would have taken the point. And so we have got that. Of course, it's enormously frustrating to throw that lead away. I do have to say, I thought we were extremely lucky. I thought that nick off Richarlison's head, Thank God it only just touched him, because I think if he'd have tried to redirect it, he probably would have got it wrong. Odebear, right? Fair play to him. Nice boy, and again has looked at his the chances that he's given on the pitch as the opportunities that they are. And again, this is a ruthless game. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. And so if ever you are given a chance to shine, you really have to get on there and seize that opportunity with both hands. And he did that. Same for Mathys Tel. Bless his heart. Lovely first touch. And again, it's so important at this level in the Premier League, where if you talk to anybody who has played the game professionally, the one thing they'll talk to you about is time. There's just no time. It all happens so quickly. And as everybody in the world knows, the Premier League is not only the most physical league, but also the fastest league. So you do have to have a very good idea of what it is that you would like to do if and when the ball comes to you. He knew that he wanted to play a sort of heavier first touch so he could then turn and shoot. And bless his heart, he did both. Very, very happy for the kid. Very happy to be back on the show. I know it's frustrating, Tottenham family. We love you enormously. We'll try to put some smiles on faces and take you into a happy weekend. Nice to be back on the show. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Steve, thank you so much as always. Really, really appreciate that. Look, let's come on to Thomas Frank and kind of where we are at the moment. You know, that game itself actually signified the first time that Spurs had taken a lead in the Premier League later than the 90th minute and not go on to win it. So it does feel that late equaliser really did sour things. You know, I think tactically there needs to be a sharpen up at home massively. You know, I have said this before, that my concern at the moment is when you are hearing Frank, even beforehand, you know, he actually seemed to suggest that there was a personnel change for the reason that Destiny Udogie wasn't starting the game, which to me, I just couldn't really get my head around. I think Destiny is so vital to Spurs in the way we build up in attack at home that not having him there, I felt was a real missed opportunity, and one that I just can't fathom really getting my head around, when I do actually think Thomas Frank is a really intelligent person. You know, it's a real frustration. You know, Luke, to come on to you in terms of where we are, and then we'll go to Russ. Our wins this season have come against second, being Man City, currently placed in the table 14th, 16th, 17th, and 19th at this present moment in terms of where those teams sit in the table. Where are you right now on Thomas Frank, Luke? When a lot of comments come in, we'll read some of them out in terms of what our viewers and listener questions are. But where are you right now under Thomas Frank as we go into another international break? And like you said, after that international break to come, is Arsenal away? Is PSG? Is the likes of Newcastle as well? Where are you, Luke, for you at the moment on Thomas Frank?
Well, I'm going to start like I started the first section that you came to me about. Context is key, right? Because there are people that are backing this manager 100%, and absolutely, that's you're entitled to do that. They will say that we're fourth, but again, as we discussed before we came on air, that we very quickly within a couple of games, the teams in 12th are very, very close to us. So there's a difficulty part here in the basis that we have so many injuries. That is definitely a part of this, moving players around, and it's always easy in hindsight to make judgment calls and say, well, that player should have started and everything else. But I completely agree. I think that Udogie not starting was a little bit strange. I think that there are some decisions that Frank makes that I find quite peculiar. I'm not sure why that is. And I think it goes against the motto of the club, to dare is to do. I think he needs to dare a little bit more. I think he's so used to being almost a steady Eddie and being absolutely brilliant at that. Let's just be clear. He's been absolutely superb. But if we was looking to sign certain players from a mid-table team, a lot of people will have question marks and say, well, shouldn't we be getting players that are a higher level than this? And obviously Frank's got a lot to comprehend here. He's got a much higher expectation. There is much more expected upon him. The style of play, as I said earlier, the fans expect it to be really, really exciting. At Brentford, that's probably not necessarily the case. He's not used to playing 2 games a week, which is very, very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. So there are so many different factors in this that it becomes more and more like tactically is where Frank seems to be really superior, right? He seems to be really good on the tactical side of things and making changes and swapping things out. That's easy to do with loads of time on the training pitch, and he doesn't have that because of the amount of games that we're playing. And then when you add in the injuries as well, it becomes even more difficult. So I think that he needs to have. It's unreasonable that people are saying that his job's in question. I don't think that's fair in any way, shape, or form just yet. However, things do need to improve, and we're not talking points here, we're talking performances, because if the performances continue to be as they are, the points will not follow. We see that with Liverpool, that they kept getting over the line, and because they were champions, people were going, that's the sign of champions. They're not playing well, they're just picking up points. And you can do that for a short period, but you can't do it consistently. And I think that's the problem. There's very few games this year where we've looked at where we've gone, we have been absolutely brilliant to a man. And unfortunately, that's the sort of level that we need to be at, specifically with the Champions League. Obviously, in the Premier League, it looks like teams are getting closer. So you've got, as we said, Man United were completely out of it last year. They look like they're actually progressing and going to be a bit of a challenge now. You've got some of the teams that are not playing in Europe that are looking strong. So it's going to be difficult. But before the season, most fans kind of said if we get between 5th, 6th, 7th, that's kind of where we're at. And at the moment, that's kind of where we're at. I'm not hugely surprised by anything I've really seen. As I say, I try not to go too crazy one side or the other, although it's football and it happens on occasions for sure. But it's kind of where I expected us to be. Before, when a transfer window ended, I clearly said everywhere, not having a left winger and not having a striker is going to be a problem for us. And guess what? We don't have a left winger, we don't have a striker, it's a problem for us. It's nothing's really surprised me. I just think that there are certain adjustments that need to be made. And I said it on the show earlier on in the week that we need to just get the relationships. They need to improve. The link up play, Xavi Simons and Oliver, as I mentioned before, their link up play today seemed to be a different level. They seem to be getting closer to each other. They seem to be bouncing the balls off of each other, and that's what we need. But I think he's done an okay job, and I heard some people talking about rating it. What would you rate his tenure so far? A 6 or 7. He's come in. He's done a steady job for me. He's not been outstanding. He's done pretty well. And forget about last year. People will talk about the 17th and everything else.
Can't keep talking about last year all the time. Can't keep going about last year, can we?
No. Yeah, the squad wasn't 17th last year, so he's got us to exactly where we would expect it to be for me. But as I said, we've now got a really challenging probably 6 weeks with some really tough opponents.
Yep.
And where we are in the table, for me, it's not just about just points being picked up because it happened for a period of time. The performances need to gradually start improving as well.
Can you just say one more thing, if you don't mind me saying? You actually raised a really good stat in the green room. Do you mind us giving that stat you did raise in the green room to us in terms of shots at the time, which you raised?
Yeah, so I think it was something around the 50th minute of our game. There was only Burnley who had less shots in the Premier League. I think we was tied with West Ham. So it clearly proves. And listen, there are a lot of people that are going to say he doesn't have the players or we've got loads of injuries, and I completely understand that. But a mentality shift in terms of pressing forward can still score goals. There's a lot of people that are probably, and we've seen it in the comments, talk about Brennan Johnson. He still nearly scored 20 goals last year. So it's not a case of they're not very good players, so therefore they can't score goals. That's not the case. Sometimes it's about getting closer up the pitch. It's about playing more attacking players, whatever that may be. So there are alternatives and ways around that, even if you don't have your best 11 or you haven't got the £100 million striker like some other clubs have. So yeah, for me, as I said, Spurs are always at their best when they're pressing, when they're almost ferocious in their approach, just going, not gung-ho, because we have to have some sort of balance, and Frank can obviously bring that, but that's the way Spurs have always been at their best for me, when they're attacking, they're intent, they're physical, and they're on their front foot.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point then, look, it depends how relevant you think this stat is. I'm going to read out here. Man United are the first team to score first, go behind, but then avoid defeat in consecutive Premier League matches since Manchester City in May to August 2012. So depending on how you want to view that stat as relevance, feel free to do so. Russ, we can't get away from the fact, this show I do think is as closely aligned to the fans as it possibly can be, right? We get a lot of match-going fans that come on, listen and watch the show. We see that in our comments. We see that straight after the game where we get those, obviously, questions that come through, just bang on the whistle. Massive boos us at half-time. 0 shots on target up until the first 50 minutes of the game. Tottenham, we had just 3 touches inside the opposition box in the first half, the joint fewest in the Premier League in home games, and in the first 45 minutes in the last 10 seasons.
Yeah.
Where are you right now in terms of Thomas Frank? Are you convinced from what you've seen so far? You were making that point, which I think is right, hasn't really got the attacking quality to work with. But should we expect more from what we're seeing right now in terms of the eye test?
Well, here's another stat for you. In the home form league, we're 18th. So that tells you that something's got to change. I mean, I do think that there is an element with Thomas Frank when he left Brentford to come to us. The discussions would have included with the likes of he who has gone, Daniel Levy. We cannot in the Premier League have a terrible season, particularly at home, like we had last season. It's just not acceptable. And I think he would have thought about that a little bit. And maybe at home, that makes him a little more, cautious. He is Scandinavian. They're not exactly known for being flamboyant people. I mean, the only truly flamboyant Scandinavian footballers that I can think of are the Danish international team, funny enough, in the 80s with the Laudrups of this world and what have you, the ones who became European champions, and maybe Thomas Brolin of Sweden, who was absolutely bonkers, and Zlatan, of course. But I digress. Thomas Frank, can he cope with the games? A lot of people say they come in thick and fast. Well, he was a manager of Brentford in the Championship, and they got promotion, and they were playing 2 games a week. So I don't think that would matter to Thomas Frank at all. I'm firmly on his side at the moment because I know when he gets the tools, the injured players back, the ones that are particularly important to Tottenham and how we have been playing over the last couple of seasons, Madison, Kulusevski, we all know who they are. I do believe that things will get a little bit better, but he's come in. I mean, let's be absolutely honest about this. Aside from the Europa League, in league form, he's come in and inherited a squad of players that, with 1 or 2 exceptions, is exactly the same now. Because, hey, guess what? For some reason, we can't seem to sell a lot of these players and we want to move on. I wonder why. He's come in and he's actually inherited the squad of players who couldn't play under Ange Postecoglou in the Premier League last season. I don't buy all this. He said, we're not going to play in the Premier League. We're just going to go for the Europa League. Personally, I think that's absolute twaddle. I just thought we were awful. And that knocks, I think, a lot out of a professional footballer. They do have feelings. They are aware of their abilities. They are aware of the criticism. And I think he came in and probably, had to pick a lot of them up, get their chins off the floor, to be honest with you. And so what I'm saying is this quite major surgery that he's required to do with our team and our football club and the way that we play and the consistency that we need to at least play on the front foot when we need to. Even if we lose games, the fans, go, wow, that was worth watching again. And that's something that we're missing. But this takes time. To use a famous phrase, he's rebuilding the foundations. And I think that we do have to be patient. Having said all that, starting 11 today, I did think he got it wrong. I do think he's a little bit too pragmatic. That is the Scandinavian in him coming through. And sometimes that's quite a good thing. The
Scandinavians change, Russ, or not?
Yeah, of course they can. Give him a couple of schnapps, they'll be fine. You see him having a little schnapps, he'd be standing on 5 strikers if we had him. But I do think that at this stage in the season, 4th in the Premier League, however poor, particularly the home performances have been, away from home, we've acquitted ourselves pretty well. But we're very, very up and down, as I said in my initial opening comments. For every terrible performance against Bournemouth, you're going to get a Man City away where we were absolutely magnificent. You're going to get a Champions League performance against a team like Copenhagen, even where we had 10 men, that there was only one team going to win it. And then you're going to come up against clubs like Manchester United, who, to be honest with you, are way off where they should be, where they have been. And so easy as it may have been on paper in our heads for us to beat them, the truth is, once again, they're not very good. I think we're slightly better than them, but we're not much better than them. And so I think that's why we were served up the sort of football from both teams that we saw today, sadly. But look, a draw is a draw. You take it. I suppose, look, a point is an improvement on the last home game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, also, we have to bear in mind, United haven't lost in 5, Tej, coming over to you. Look, we'll talk about the home form shortly. We're going to hear from Frank after Tej's appraisal or what he'll say about Thomas Frank. There's many feeling that Thomas Frank is doing a really good job. He's lost Son in the summer, who I don't think we've replaced, just to be very, very clear. He's got no Maddison. He's got no Kulusevski. He's had Solanke injured for pretty much the entire season so far. That's 56 goal contributions from last season gone. Spurs are, as we recalled, the second highest scorers in the league, just one behind Man City. We are, like I say, at the moment, for those that are a fan of the data and fan of context of table, yes, Tottenham at the moment are inside the top 6. However, Luke made a very good point that given the fixtures that are coming up, and this is not to be negative, it's just being reality where we are, the table is that congested where a couple of wins or a couple of defeats can take you pretty much anywhere between top 4 all the way down to kind of mid-table bottom half. So that's why I'm really not having a massive focus right now on the table. Tej, very quickly, where are you on Thomas Frank before we hear from the Dane?
I mean, everybody is entitled to their opinion. And again, with poor home form, and especially when we were, moments away from what would have been a really satisfying victory to come from behind to beat Manchester United. I understand, excuse me, that people are going to, say all sorts of things, and some of them may mean them and some of them may not. For me, I mean, I would never question as to, whether he should go. I mean, we're in November, for goodness sake. He's only just arrived. He hasn't had any windows, and he's got a plethora of injuries in key positions. And, we all know where those key positions are. You just said, Rick, 56 goals gone. So we know where our frailties lie. I'm sure he knows where our frailties lie as well. He's a very clever man, and he's been, doing this professionally for a very long time. For me, though, I just want to go back to what Luke was saying about energy and pressing. Not to sound like a broken record, but again, that for me in life is one of the most important things that you can do, is that you always have to give your all. You have to, or stay home. Again, I said last time, not to sound...
You're not seeing that? Sort of be a pain. Are you suggesting that you're not seeing that?
Certainly not.
You're not seeing that.
And I would argue, is anybody seeing that? I said the last time I was on the show, not to sound too Californian about it, but, there is this adage that I very much agree with, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. And so, again, I just know what it would mean to me to put on a Tottenham shirt with Ramini written on the back.
Yeah,
I give absolutely everything from the first whistle to the last. You'd have to drag me off the pitch by the shirt collar. Sorry, Rick, you wanted to say something?
On that point, though, Tej, you're mentioning there, because I think it's a really important point to say here. Is it the fact, I know a lot of people suggest when they watch his post-match interviews, when they come on to his post-match interview in a second, that there's an acceptance there, that he's quite happy from what he's seeing at the moment. And the kind of throwaway line is, well, that's Thomas Frank, quite happy with Brentford level standards.
Rick,
is there also a case where...
I don't think we need to look or read too much into what he says and what he doesn't say. A lot of what managers say after the game,
That's what I mean. Is it a case that he can't afford to really derail the dressing room?
They're in a precarious position. I've never seen a manager come, very rarely it happens, right? Somebody will come out and go, that was rubbish. This was unacceptable. This person was no good. This person was no, that's not what they're there to do. Perfect. Thank you, original Jimska. If you want, so people can say, we don't have this player. We don't have this player. We're not good enough. Our squad this, our squad that. What Sunderland showed and proved today, and Rick, we were talking during the game, and I even said whether they managed to hold on or not. This was when they were 1-0 up. That is how you play at home. If anyone, no disrespect to Sunderland at all, if anything, tremendous respect for Sunderland. If anyone's looking at their squad and looking at the Tottenham squad, even who we have available right now, if anyone is saying, I think the Sunderland squad is stronger than the Tottenham squad, you're deluded. But they are so committed. They are so dedicated, not only to their fans, to the shirt, to the club, to the badge, but to one another and to their manager. They have a very, very clear message. And again, to Luke's point, I promise you that wins you football matches. It just does, man. If you are pressing, they don't feel like they have a second. They make mistakes. They're under pressure. Arsenal are the best team in the country. It kills me to say that, but they are the best team in the country. And Sunderland really took it to them today. I was absolutely just awestruck and so filled with emotion and exhilaration watching a team that went about their business with endeavour, with energy, with efficiency, and with aplomb. Fair play to them. Why can't we do that? That is the only thing that I would say. Again, if I'm in that dressing room, go out and give absolutely everything. Be first to every ball, make every tackle, make every pass. Don't be turned over by anybody. Just be like what Sunderland did today, and we will win more football matches, I promise you.
The thing is, I'm not doubting, just to be very, very clear, that Thomas Frank has got limited options right now. That's not a doubt. We know he's got players that are out. There's no question about that, right? And he's having to, like I say, for the first time in his professional career at a high standard Premier League club in Tottenham, try and figure out a way that he can put out teams twice a week where he believes to be at a good standard to win games. The only concern that I have found so far this season is that, you know, I was critical last season of having a manager that, I said this, didn't really focus much on the opposition. We've got somebody that is very much hell-bent on focusing on the opposition, where I worry that we're maybe too focused on the worries of what the opposition are going to do, and we're forgetting what we've got. And maybe people will argue, well, we haven't got much. And that's also a fair argument in terms of our quality up front. You know, there's no getting away from it. I've said this consistently on here since the start of the season. We have got, in my opinion, the worst set of forwards probably in over 2 decades. That's how poor our forwards are. And I'm not getting away from that. So he's definitely limited in terms of what he's got to work with. What you just said there, TJ, is kind of what I want to feel, that when you've been a Sunderland fan all this season and you've been at home, you want to feel like you're giving it your all in every single game. You're leaving everything on the pitch. Everything on the pitch.
Absolutely.
I'm not
that
feeling at the moment
results.
doing that.
It just does, man. At every level of the game, that gets you results. And again, that's a decision you can make before the game even starts.
Of course. Look, for a moment, listen, you're arguing in terms of the data test, they might be passing the data test, but in terms of the eye test, I think that's where at the moment there's some concern there. Yes, we did fight back. Yes, we did come back into a game. We did come back and nearly get a win. But I think we also have to be real with ourselves that it would have been smash and grab had we got it. Look, let's hear from the day. Let's hear from Thomas Frank on the back of that United game, and let's see what he's got to say about that 2-2 draw against Manchester United.
After that, obviously, the team did so well to kind of come back into it and think they were going to win it, and then to lose or draw at the death.
Yeah, of course. Of course, the emotions inside me are high, of course, but I take the positive out of this game. That's what I believe. How I believe in we build a good team and keep adding layers to it. I think overall a fine / good performance against a good Man United team that's definitely in flow. And we're talking a bit about our how can you say level of defensive attacking threats, and to play against a Man United team that play with confidence with Cunha and Amat and Mbeumo and Sesko coming on, and we kept them down to 5 shots. That's just another example on the other way around. It's not that easy just to create in the Premier League, even that they had all their big boys out there. That said, our second half, our response, I was extremely happy with. We're playing home. Of course, we all want to win, and don't talk too much about home form and all that. And I know we need to win before we don't talk about it. But the way we turn around to stay in the game, kept doing the right thing throughout second half. Very, very happy with that, and also so close to win it. And on any other day, we win it.
There was a reaction, obviously, to one of your subs from the crowd, but it felt like your changes on the day worked.
Yeah, sometimes you're lucky. But of course, I would say that every single time I take a decision to sub a player, it's with one aim, to make the team winning or getting back in the team, back in the game, or try to see the game out or whatever. It's only with one aim, try to win the game. And no doubt Matty did did well. Great goal, great involvement, and in general, I think actually Xavi played a fine game, a positive, but also you need a little bit of freshness.
Did you hear the boos when you were making the substitutions?
I'd just say every single time I make a decision, there's one aim, that is to make the team better.
What did you specifically from Mathys? Like, was it the movement up front that you just wanted to change?
Score goal.
Hi, Thomas. So much of this fixture, from a Spurs perspective, is centred on the Europa League Final, 4 straight wins against United. Was that something you could feel in the last few days? Did that affect your preparation? And can you see United's improvement since those games?
I think I saw this game as one game ahead of us. I would love to do everything we could to try to win it. That was the aim of the game. I think I spoke before the game about it's clearly that they have improved this season. They look, how can you say, more in sync together, but also that I think especially in going forward, they look like a big threat. That's why I actually think, I know we conceded 2 goals, but if you concede 5 shots in a game, probably if you said that before the game to me, I probably said, yeah, take that. So we're all happy.
Were you expecting Bryan to start on the left today?
Yeah, I think we've seen it's not the first time that Ruben have, how can I say, played around with the front 3 position. I think no matter where Bryan plays, I think he's a threat, which he showed again today.
Thomas, most managers will say that they've got to work on their team, there's things to improve, but is that game kind of evidence of that, really? Because you're talking about your defence doing well, but then it didn't do so well maybe clearing the ball for the first goal, and maybe you didn't look as much of a threat as you wanted your team to until the last 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, so please ask the question again.
So your defence, you said your defence played well,
yeah,
but didn't do particularly well for the first goal. It seemed to struggle to get the ball away, and then you weren't as much of a threat with your offensive players as you might have been until the end of the game.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think I used that they played well, the defence. I think I said if you concede 5 shots, then before the game, you probably would have taken that. That's not the same at the 2 shots they had, maybe even on target. Was 2 situations we probably could have done better in. And we will, of course, look through that and go through the details. So that's, of course, a fair point. Then we play a game against a team where both teams try to cancel each other a little bit out. We always want to create a little bit more, but you can then flip that and say, hey, we scored 2 goals in a situation where it's difficult to create.
Hi, Thomas. You started with a sort of certain make-up up front today, made changes at half-time, then more changes with sort of 20 minutes to go, which obviously worked brilliantly. But are you still sort of really trying to find the right combinations in attack? Is that, and what are you looking for? What's the team kind of not doing that you're looking for to get them to do?
The team not doing in general,
attack, I mean, just finding the right combinations. It feels like you're still sort of searching for the right blend.
I think that's fair. We are searching to find the right balance up front, and I think when we look the game back, I think there was positive bits going forward also from the game. I think we created what we want. One of the biggest chances with Richarlison from across from Brennan after 5-10 minutes, and sometimes the small things he scores on that instead of Bryan, it changed a little bit and opened up the game a tiny bit more. But we constantly work on the relationship and try to improve it with the players and try to find what is exactly the right blend. But I think there was small steps in the right direction. He actually struggled a little bit, but nothing big.
Hi, Thomas. Just on from that, another injury update. Christian Romero came off with a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, just done. physically. He just came back from that injury. He's fine.
So he'll be okay for international break?
Yeah.
How much of a blow is it having him come off, given the manner of the goal he conceded in the 96th minute? I mean, he's obviously a big threat at set pieces, both defensively.
But I think his position, he wouldn't have been near the goal anyway. So it's a cross on the side, and then he would have been in the middle zone. So this was back post, so that wouldn't affect anything.
Hi, Thomas. Can you talk about Will Snowderberg's performance today? Because he was really, really good and sort of followed up on Tuesday's performance. And also, sort of, why didn't you feel it was right to start him today as well?
I think, we try to work around how we can say what is the best way to attack the opponent in front of us. Try, and on the same time still how can I say, keep a little bit of flow. But I think we wanted to strikers, so we played to the left. Richard, but came more in for the crosses, which we think was a area where we potentially could hit Man United. I think it worked perfectly with the first one, where Richie get a big chance. So that could have been a unbelievable, fantastic game plan from us. So that was part of it, and we need different personalities and types for different games.
And just on Wilson.
And Wilson. Yeah, sorry. I think again he's positive. I think he's stepping forward or stepping up. Sorry, and doing things that looks right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So that was Thomas Frank there on the back of Tottenham Hotspur. In the end, frustratingly having to accept the draw against Manchester United, denied very, very late, of course, at the death there. Listen, we have got over 4,500 that are watching us live. As always, thank you ever so much for your incredible support for Last One on Spurs. We greatly appreciate it. We're joined by the brilliant broadcast extraordinaire Russ Williams. We're joined by actor TJ Ramini. We're joined by Luke over at Spotlight on Spurs. Luke getting a lot of love on this show. As many know, we've kind of got a regular cast that we don't normally ever alter, change or tweak, with all due respect to all the wonderful people that are out there. But I think Luke's making real waves at the moment in terms of what he's doing out there with obviously Spurs content. And I don't know if everyone agrees. I think so. I think Luke's a great fit for this show. So we're loving having Luke on here. I know the cast are loving having Luke as well. So Luke, thank you so much for joining us on these shows. We're loving having you on. And I say, guys out there, if you can keep for us, liking, hyping, subscribing, that would be greatly appreciated. I'll say it again for those that want to get interactive with a very, very busy chat room at the moment. They're very, very busy chat. You can do, if you hit that subscribe button, it allows you into there. And I say we are going to try and bring a new feature that one of our own Russ Williams has come up with during the next set of fixtures to come. We're going to hopefully try and bring in some voice notes from you wonderful listeners and viewers, where we're going to give you a number where you can send us in your voice notes. Now, obviously, we will have to be careful about what can and can't be said during what times it'll be broadcasted. But we're going
Can you imagine the rage, Rick? The rage, the humour. It'd be great.
I'm just reading the comments that come through whilst we're doing this show.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And I know when there's some weird ones on there, because I look at TJ's face. TJ looks back at me, and I look back at me and think, God, is that broadcastable? Yeah. I'm not sure. No. But listen, thanks so much to everybody out there. I just heard from Thomas Frank there. Pretty much happy with the performance. Thought it was a fine performance. Obviously, frustrating that we didn't get over the line. And again, we come on to why we didn't get over the line. Got to ask you just quickly, boys, before we do get into the game itself. We're going to come onto the game very quickly. We're not going to cover moment by moment, really the key features of the game. This home form. I mean, like I said, at the moment, Russ, he was seconds away from what would have been a statement Premier League home win. It would have been the first in nearly 3 months. And look, this home form, just to be very, very clear, this dates back, as we know, before, Frank's tenure, right? This is obviously during the Ange Postecoglou reign, but it's a massive, massive worry. The home form, I think, this season, 5 points from 6 matches and only a single win, which came against newly promoted Burnley on the season's opening day. And it's only, I think 3 home wins in our last 21 home games. I mean, Russ, being at home is where you're meant to be the favourites. Home is when you're meant to have, your best form. And really the away form, which we've been superb at, really, is where you take a point away from home. It looks like a good result. Don't get me wrong. You can't do that every week if you want to be in the top 4. But really the home form normally is the foundation for a very, very good season. Is that going to change, Russ? Will it change?
Well, I think it will, and it has to. I mean, it's interesting. He uses buzz phrases. Thomas Frank, believe is a word that he really likes. because I think he does believe that for everything he does, it's a good decision. And it was the reaction was interesting when somebody said, "Well, what about the boos when Xavi Simons went on and you made the substitutions?" And that was when Tel, of course, was one of the players that came on. He said, "Well, he scored a goal, didn't he?" And just looked at the reporter. What can the reporter say? Yeah. Because, in Frank's words, he said, maybe I got lucky. I think it's calculated risk with him. The issue I have with the home form is number one, the passion of the team does not seem to be as we are on the road for some inexplicable reason. That is why people say, "Oh, well, the atmosphere, at home games is really flat, blah, 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 blah." The players have to make the fans want to make a noise by
Is it a two-way street, Russ, for you? Do you see that a two-way?
Yes, it is.
Is it a two-way street for you? You see that as the fans have got to support the players have to support the fans. Is that how you see it?
I do. I think if the players play well and the fans can see that they're giving it their all, even if the game is going against them, you get a better atmosphere. And I think part of the problem at home is only a teeny-weeny bit is perhaps we're a little bit quieter than we should be. Although at the start of the game today, we were pretty good in the second half when we were well on top and got those 2 goals. The atmosphere was a bit more Spurs-like. But it is part of the jigsaw. It is part of answering the problem as well. But poor defensive mistakes repeatedly at home this season and definitely last season with essentially the same players. It is a problem because Ange Postecoglou couldn't fix it, and Thomas Frank is struggling with these same defenders at home. And I have no answer to it. I really don't know. The only thing I do know is that I don't particularly enjoy watching us play at home in the Premier League at the moment, and I'm desperate for it to change because I know that we can do a lot better.
Look, we'll come on to the selection in a second. I think there's no doubt about it. I've said this at the start of the show. There was the wrong 11 picked, and look, everything framed in terms of the subs worked, but I think it comes back to that argument really is why didn't we start that way? Let's come on to that lineup, and let's come on to Luke and we'll go to Tej in terms of the lineup itself, what we made of it. So for Frank, look, he chose that decision in terms of the lineup where for him, he had to make 3 changes. And just to be very, very clear, we understand as things stand at the moment, Kolo Muani has picked up a jaw injury, despite Thomas Frank there stating in the post-match press conference, there is no problem. But we understand that's going to be assessed on Sunday, but he's due to undergo a scan on his jaw. He left the field with a jaw problem, which is why he did come off. That's been reported by Fabrice Hawkins, very well-respected French journalist that, again, wouldn't be putting that information out there if it wasn't true. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Like we knew, Mohamed Kudus was touch and go for the game itself as to whether he would be involved. He missed out on the game. João Palhinha came back into the starting lineup. He replaced Rodrigo Bentancur. At fullback, Frank brought back Jed Spence, fresh from another England call-up for Destiny Udogie, which seems to have been the big call to make. Now, quite interestingly, Frank said the decision to drop Wilson Odobert and Destiny Udogie to the bench is just for different personnel for a different type of match. Luke, we'll come to you. What did you make of that lineup and those comments from Frank pre-game on the lineup?
Yeah, I said that when he was appointed that there will be players played in positions that or changes made that might not necessarily make sense, but he spotted something tactically. And I think that's part of the problem. I think we mentioned it earlier, is that we worried so much about the opposition. I think the Spence decision was purely because he thought that their right-hand side was going to be Mbeumo and Diallo. And they are 2 attacking players who are very, very good, left-footed coming infield. So I think that was part of the reason why Spence played, because Udogie's offered you so much going forward. And I also said that I think that if Udogie doesn't play, then Odobert has to, because they're the only 2 players on that left-hand side that provide you with some sort of width. Every other player that we have comes in field. So obviously Spence at fullback, and then everybody else, Johnson's, Tel's, Richarlison, they all want to come in field immediately. So I think one of them 2 always has to play just to maintain the width. So that's why I think Spence started. I like Udogie, and I think Udogie offers us a lot, but I could understand why Spence was the one that he went to. But then obviously Mbeumo went and played on the left-hand side, and then it was not what he thought it was going to be. I think Odobert should have absolutely started. That one was the real strange. It seems to me that he's almost kind of went with the Europa League final tactics, overloading that back post, getting Porro and Johnson to cross the ball into Richarlison, and obviously it would have been Moani as well. And it didn't quite work out. And that every manager is going to do something at different stages where it might work out, it might not. And you look at the Tel situation. I don't think there's been some things mentioned in the online and everything else that the booing was for Tel. I don't think it was. I think it was for bringing Xavi Simons off. I think Simons looked in the last game like he was getting to a good level. He got brought off, and you could see the frustration. And soon as it was announced, even the commentary team were going, well, that's not going to go down well. They hadn't even made the sub, but the commentators were going, this is not going to go down well with these fans bringing off Xavi Simons when you need a goal. So I think that was part of the decision, part of why the fans were booing. And obviously, Tel then goes and scores a goal. Everyone would have probably said Richarlison should have been the one to come off instead, possibly with Tel going up front, and Richarlison's gets a little flick on and scores the goal. So in some ways, he will argue, well, what I'd done was correct, and we was 30 seconds, a minute away from a victory, and all of the subs have made the changes, and that's what's impacted the goal. So, but yeah, Odobert for me, especially with the international break round the corner, I think he should have started, and he was involved in both the goals. People forget that he was the one that beat the man that gave Udogie the ball, then Tel scored, and then obviously I think if Richarlison don't get a touch, I think Odobert's shot goes straight in anyway. But he was a massive part of it, and I feel like he's just getting into his stride a little bit. I think the build up, I keep going back to it about having relationships, and his relationship with Xavi Simons is going to have to be pushed upon for us to start creating chances, because they should be in the team and they should be playing consistently with each other, and I think they're on the same wavelength. So the Odobert one, dropping him was a big shock for me. And then the other part to this also is that Moani and Richarlison, they seem to half be sort of managing their minutes. And we've done this a couple of times last year as well. If you're managing two players' minutes, I don't know why you'd have them both on the pitch at the same time, because you want to bring one on and bring one off, because otherwise if they both... So for me, it should have been one or the other. And you've got to, as a manager, you've got to think about all different scenarios. So if we're really struggling and got to bring someone on to kind of change the game, then Richarlison, Moani kind of makes the sense, I guess. But having both of them already there, for me, just didn't really make sense. As I say, Odobert was the big one for me that was really surprising. I think he should definitely be starting. To be honest with you, as I said, either him or Udogie should be starting on that left-hand side, because they're the only players that provide any width, and that's what we need to be providing to start creating more chances, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to just come over to you, we're going to briefly touch upon the first goal of the game. I mean, to be fair, this doesn't do it justice what we're showing the audience, which is the goal itself, because really it was the build-up, which is the more cynical matter of how this goal comes about rather than the nature of the goal itself. And Mbeumo heads United ahead on the 32nd minute. It's another goal where Spurs would have felt they could have done better, and it all really came together because Sarr didn't clear the ball, and instead he hit an unnecessary pass to Van der Ven, who hurriedly cleared it against a United player. It's worked back in, and Mbeumo heads past Vicario. It's just not a good goal to concede. I think, Tej, you said it before on the show on so many occasions. We are the masters of our own downfall. We were hoping, really, with maybe a change of manager and a more disciplined, a more straightforward, a more logical approach to the way we're going to set up and play and be structured, these goals weren't going to happen. But again, such a poor goal to concede. I don't think you can put that goal into Thomas Frank. I really don't think you can. I think you've got to put it on the players. But again, such a poor goal to concede. In a game where I said it beforehand, the first goal in this game, in my opinion, was going to be absolutely critical. It dictates the mood from the fans. It dictates the way the players are going to react to the fan base. Tej, your thoughts on opening goal? It was really, really poor, wasn't it?
It was really poor, yeah. And I mean, if anyone is putting that on Thomas Frank, again, people are entitled to their opinions, but
players.
In my opinion, absolute lunacy, especially if you look at, again, the manner of how that was conceded. You just stated we had two clear-cut opportunities just to clear our lines or just play the correct pass. Again, at this level, so much of it is decision-making. If you are granted opportunities, and again, this Manchester United team, they're not a great side. They've purchased two really good players in Cunha and Mbeumo and paid the big money for them, and that's how you bring proven quality into a football team, is that you just pay the money and they come. It's just as simple as that. And so that was enormously frustrating. I mean, you can talk about, maybe the ball shouldn't have been played into the box, but he shouldn't have had the ball in the first place.
Exactly.
We had 2 clear-cut opportunities to make the right decision, and we made neither. Now, as far, I just want to go back to what Luke was saying about not just width, but starting 11 and Odegaard and stuff. So a couple of things about what we've been chatting about this afternoon. And again, not to come over here with my rose-colored spectacles and sort of glaze them all over this fabulous program, but can any one of us believe, if we look back 6 weeks ago, even a month ago, that we were talking about, Tel has to start, Odegaard has to start? That's massive, guys. That's a huge thing. All of us, myself included, were saying, oh my goodness, I don't think Odegaard's he's going to have what it takes. He's too frail, too slight. He's like a little boy. Same with Tel. I remember being on a show way back. It might have been like first couple of games, Rick, with Patrick. I adore Patrick. I've got such love for Big Patrick. And we were talking about Tel because the fans were really getting on him. Again, they're entitled. I understand it's frustrating, but I was saying, let's not kill this boy. Again, it's not his fault that he cost the money that he did. And there's some unfinished business between Bayern Munich and Tottenham with regards to Harry Kane and money and all that kind of thing. So he's at the club. So let's get behind this boy. There's definitely a player there. So that's huge for us that we're talking about these two boys. Same with Xavi. None of us were convinced by Xavi. I remember, was it last week? I had my Xavi shirt in the bag. And now it's out the bag, right? I wore it on the last show. So these are all, trending in the right direction, right? To use a bit of management speak that David Brent would be proud of. And so these are some real positives. We just have to be a bit smarter and a bit more clinical in decision making. Whatever it's going to be, it has to have intent. You can't just kind of wing it. That there just isn't room for that in the Premier League. And so, again, we didn't lose today. And more importantly than that, we've got players who, I'll go out on a limb and say, I don't think any of us expected we're going to kind of reach the levels that they have quite so quickly. And now we're saying, Wilson Odegaard's going to start. This is great, Tottenham family.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, I thought also that goal kind of showed therein lies the difference between having a centre forward who's on form and to have really at that point forgotten where the goal was, because in Mbeumo's goal was no better than the Richie chance after
whoever's started. Richie should never. And like again, the difference in the first half, that cross that Brennan Johnson put into Richie, that was one of those crosses that was that good.
Even get
brother,
it
was the right height, the right angle, the right speed, the right pace, the right everything, anything on that, and he missed it completely. Completely.
You can't legislate for that.
He cannot be our guy. He cannot be our guy. No. Sorry to interrupt you, mate.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean,
I know he got that goal, but thank God he just touched it with his hair. Thank God, because if he tried to do anything with it, it would have ended up.
It would have gone wide. No, it already came, as you said, that first goal from start with that playing that strange pass. I mean, Van der Ven and Vicario both over the side immediately after the goal to tell him exactly what they thought. And it was just a hint of kind of growing relentlessness that it had been a tight game. But, in that first half, Spurs really looked short on ideas to really break down the opposition, not for the first time. And Xavi was probably looking at the player that might have done that. So he reached half-time, and it means Spurs at that point have produced, like we said, just 0.12 XG across their last 3 halves of Premier League football. There was a smattering of boos. And at that point, I think at half-time, Spurs XG 0.07 at half-time to Man United 0.29. So forgive everyone for saying, it was a tough watch. I think there was a feeling that, I think we saw actually at half-time, believe it was Odegaard warming up, right? So I think we all were feeling that there was going to be a change at half-time for Thomas Frank. Now, in terms of, like I say, the second half and how we started that game, there was a top save to deny Wilson. Odegaard whipped in a fine cross. Romero's back heel was pushed out by Lemons. It looks like Man United have finally potentially found a goalkeeper after how many years they've tried to maybe replace the likes of, God, they've had so many in there, but you go back to even Schmeichel, they've really found that hard. And then, like I say, Spurs, I mean, to be fair to Spurs second half, they were a lot better. I'd say onwards from the 55 minute, we had that great, obviously, effort from Romero denied. Richarlison played off Johnson instead of the free Odegaard to his left. And again, that's the frustration because Richarlison at that point picked the wrong option. Odegaard was free and onside. And at that point, this is where you want Frank to be proactive and make changes. He did make changes, to be fair to him. Udogie replaced Porro with Spence switching to the right. Bentancur and Tel came on for Polina and Xavi. There were big boos around the stadium for that second change. I mean, Russ, we'll just come to you. Xavi Simons so far, difficult. Again, I think he's a young kid. I did say this before, and many people think I'm being a cop-out here by saying this. I think it's really hard at this point to judge Xavi Simons right now, a player that's come into a new league, new players, new manager in terms of coaching. Obviously, I'm working with them on a week-to-week basis. He's now trying to be playing twice a week right now. Xavi Simons, Russ, what have you made of him so far? Because your face tells us a quite concerning story.
We saw glimpses against Copenhagen, fairly weak team, has to be said. I think he's done okay, and we're so desperate for somebody to light up our side and provide the locksmith balls and chip in with a few goals and what have you. Maybe we expected too much too soon, but I've got absolutely no doubt that obviously he's a top international footballer, and it will take him 2 or 3 months, maybe a little longer, to really feel comfortable in the Premier League, and he'll be flying. I've got absolutely no doubt. There's many other players in our squad who should be under the microscope instead of him. I can tell you, including the usual suspects. So I just have no concerns. I just think there's positive glimpses of what he can do. And I think he's going to have, Rick, I know I did text you today and I said, we're going to get a bit of magic from Xavi. And you said, oh, you're right, praying. It didn't happen today.
Sound like Frank, I'm always hopeful.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to believe Rick, like Thomas Frank. But
absolutely,
he is going to come up with a moment, hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. Be lovely, wouldn't it? But he will. I have no concerns about him at all.
Okay. Luke, just very quick in your opinion on him. Look, he was Spurs' brightest player definitely in the first half. He was trying to make things happen. Like we said, loud boos around the stadium. He was taken off. What have you made of Xavi so far? As I would say, we go into the second international break of the season. We're now, like you said, approaching some very big games to come. Arsenal, PSG away. In an ideal world, you'd want him to be more confident, maybe what he's showing right now. But gut feeling, Luke, from what you're seeing so far, can you see him having a positive second half of the season?
Yeah, definitely. I said on the last show about him that being the level that he needs to be at, creating a little bit more, getting on the ball a little bit more, just having that bit of confidence. And I feel like you see that in the first 5 or 10 minutes. He intercepted a ball. He kind of shifted someone off the ball. He stood Casemiro up and just went by him like he wasn't there. And I hadn't seen that from Xavi. It was almost like he didn't have the confidence to do that previously. So I feel like there was definitely some moments. And as you said, he was the brightest player on the pitch for me before he came off. So it was a surprise. I thought he should have definitely stayed on. But yeah, I have no doubt that, as I said before, that I think we need better technical players that are almost on his level. I think he sees football to a decent level, and I think we need to get some players around him that kind of understand him a little bit more. So relationships can grow over time, or you can just instantly find players that are on the same level. As I said, I think Odegaard understands what Xavi's going to do. Quick little passes, quick little 1-2s, bouncing the ball off of the forward, like Mawani, for instance. And I feel like if we get better quality players, I think we get a better Xavi. But we need to feed him. But also, I think it's very evident that the runs off of the ball are not to the standard that Xavi kind of expects, really. I think that's part of our issue, is that he can see things, but the movement just isn't there. I think with Richarlison, one of the things that he unfortunately does is there's some of the runs he makes are not of a centre forward, a goal scoring centre forward. Sometimes they're to create space for someone else or whatever, when in fact your striker needs to be making the runs to score goals, and that's what Xavi wants to do. So
I think Richarlison's the first thing that he always has in his mind is win a free kick. That's the first thing, honestly, because all he's looking to do, in my opinion, Luke, is he's just looking to to score a free kick. You know, he looked for any kind of contact, leap to the ground and clutch any kind of part of his body.
I agree. He's an agitator of the opposition. He tries
so
to agitate the opposition.
I know Eric Lamela was kind of big into that as well, but you know, he wasn't our number 9. And also he was just far more effective, and at least he put himself about and won the ball and stuff. Actually, I'll just carry on with the thought, because while you were talking, Luke, I was thinking, you know, these technical players, and I agree. I actually think we kind of have quite a lot of those already. It's just that technique takes time. I think our slighter players like Odebear, like Tel, like Xavi. I also think, thanks, Dave. I also think young Archie Gray. I think we've got some technical players. You know, I would like to see some more pure athletes, because you know how we were talking about that fast pace and that press and everything that you were talking about, mate. That's not only very important to you. I think it's fundamental for a lot of Tottenham fans. But again, in my opinion, I do think that wins you football matches. So for me, there's an imbalance there. We don't have enough pure athletes. Again, if you look at the Sunderland squad, they're so athletic. They're so fast and so strong and so physical. And I think we need a little bit more of that.
Yeah. One thing I just want to quickly say, I think King makes a great point here. Get runners close to Xavi. I think it's so important. I think at the moment, you know, there's that crazy thing that was going out there where I think I saw it mentioned on social media around the fact that, you know, for a second time in a week, Spurs scored twice in quick succession after Xavi being taken off. You know, I think some out there maybe feel that he's being scapegoated for Spurs' negative tactics. But I think at the moment, it's an inability, in my opinion, to get the ball to him and also getting quality players around him. It actually goes back to what Russ is saying, that I think with quality players around someone like Xavi, you're going to see so much more from him. And this is where, again, I have a lot of sympathy for Thomas Frank, right? I think people might think that I'm, you know, turning on Thomas Frank. Just be very, very clear. I'm not turning on Thomas Frank, right? I think the show has to reflect the balance of what match game fans see, which is very, very important, I think, to all of us here. We try and make this show, if we can, as close to the terrace as possible. But also at the same time, I think no one here is sitting here saying Thomas Frank should or needs to be sacked. No one has said that on this show. But at the same time, you have to also, I think, you know, give an opinion as to where things are at. Otherwise, what are we all doing here, quite frankly? I mean, what are we doing if we're not going to give opinions on what we're seeing? I also don't think fans are blind, right? Fans have been and watched the games at the stadium and are at home. And quite frankly, they've only seen one win so far this season. And look, this again, in terms of the home form, goes before Thomas Frank. So we're not saying it's anything to do with that. But I think at the same time, I think you have to appreciate on Xavi, we need to get runners closer to him, and Russ come in.
Yeah, on Thomas Frank, why can't he see that Richarlison is never going to make it now? But, you know, save for the goal today, whether it was intentional or not, why can't our manager see that Richarlison, whose second touch invariably is a tackle, is never, ever, ever going to be good enough to play out front for a club with a proud tradition of strikers? And I'm not being disrespectful to him. I'm only telling you what we've all seen with our eyes.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
you know, he would have got even more abuse, and he got a lot of it. And I don't think that's necessarily right. I think you've got to make salient points about people. But if he hadn't have got that goal today, it would have been 10 times worse. But I do think it's concerning that Thomas Frank decided once again to play Richie up front. He did move a little bit in the first half. Kolo Muani went in the middle and Richie went on the left. If he is going to play him, just play him on the left, where he was a nuisance for Everton. Yeah, but I just wonder. I hope he's not got a blind spot about him. He'd probably come good now, Rick, after the break and score every game for about 10 games.
Really cast over poor Dane Scarlett. I mean,
exactly.
You're right, Steve. You're right. I mean, Dane must be looking at.
Is just.
I think that's really key. Steve.
Who's been at Tottenham, you know, since out of the womb and then straight into the training facility. What more does he have to do? And he looked very bright when he came on the other day. Poor kid. I really feel for him. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, I think you're spot on, Tej. I think just to come on that point, Russ. Sorry, Tej, what you just said there. I think if you're Dane Scarlett, and number one, you've come on and did a cameo like you did. He's won the penalty. Richarlison has, you know, rattled the bar. You're probably thinking to yourself, what have I got to do to earn a chance? Didn't hear the manager actually saying the pre-match presser about Dane Scarlett that Dane, he needs more games. Well, Thomas, you're the manager, so you can give Dane Scarlett more games. But clearly, he just doesn't feel he's ready. Because otherwise, if he feels he's ready, he'd be playing him. And it goes back to that point where at the moment, he probably just feels right now, Richarlison is all that he's got. And I think he made that actually point. You know, he's saying, all I want our players to do is score goals. You know, I think like Russ has made it very, very clear, you know, throughout this show since the start, like Russ has said, we simply, and I agree with him, we do not have the quality of forward. And I'm sorry to sound like a broken record. I honestly think at the moment, we are working with probably the worst set of forwards in probably the last 2 decades. I really, really think that. That's not just to give him a complete pass on our build-up play and on the way we're trying to attack, but it does make a massive, massive difference. Guys, let's come on to Spurs getting back into the game because, look, ironically, 3 of Frank's subs combined for the goal. But this fact will even raise more points, like we said there, Russ, about why were they not in the starting lineup? You know, Tel has struggled for minutes this season, but, you know, for him, it was a crucial goal, which hopefully will fill in with a great sense of confidence. There's no doubt about that. Like I say, Spurs getting their equaliser. And, you know, again, it was all down to Wilson Odebear's positivity, really, that got them that. Wilson Odebear drives with the ball, finds a doggy until spins and lashes home in the 84th minute. It was a brilliant goal. And really, at that point, the sub had worked to get Spurs back into the game at 1-1 with a tremendous finish from Mathys Tel. It was a really good finish from Tel. And, you know, we talk about Tel at the moment. For him, you know, his arrival, you know, he came on to booze. Wasn't for him, just to be clear, was more for Xavi, but more so for the Frenchman to make that impact. Again, we're looking at turning points for a player this season. Yes, he scored up at Leeds. I mean, very quickly, Tej, just... You've been quite praiseful of Tel, his attitude, his application. The one thing I love about Tel is his mentality. He's a young kid, was he not picked in the Champions League initial phase, but hasn't allowed it, pardon the pun, to phase him. He's come back. His attitude is to work really, really hard. And it was a great goal to get Spurs back in the game, wasn't it?
Yeah,
great goal.
It was. And also, you know, he came out publicly after being left out of the Champions League. I mean, you know, how old again is this poor kid? You know, what is he, 20, 21?
Yep.
You know, I mean... It's so difficult, man. So difficult. And again, you know, coming from a different culture, a different country, different club, yada, 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 big price tag. I mean, he's had all the possible encumbrances that one could have, and they've all been heaped upon his young shoulders. And we were all critical of him, myself included. I'll hold my hands up and say I was critical of this poor boy. But, you know, I could see something. And again, I just wanted him to be given, you know, a little bit of room and, you know, we can prop him up a little bit. I felt that he was the kind of kid that, you know, some of those players, you know, need a cuddle and some of them need a kick up the arse. And I think he was the former rather than the latter. And so good for him, man. We talk about the training facilities all the time and, you know, Tottenham, great stadium and all the rest of it. Those training facilities, I know they actually qualify as a 7-star hotel. If it was a hotel, it would qualify as a 7-star hotel. And if you've ever been to a 7-star hotel, madame, you know, pretty special. But that's not what they're there for. You know, they are there for the betterment of these players. And he's clearly doing that. You know, he's clearly turning up at training and putting the hard yards in. And so fair play to the kid. Again, this is what we want to see. This is where you earn your plaudits. And like I said before, at the highest level of any sport, again, people categorize it to one thing. It is speed. There is no time. And so you have to know what you're going to do if and when the ball comes your way. And he did that. He did. First touch was perfect. Strike was, people are going to say it's a deflection and both of his goals have been deflections.
Deserve that luck for taking the effort.
Bro, if you don't buy a ticket, no? If you don't buy a ticket and the kid's buying tickets. So, you know, fair play to him. And again, we really need somebody right now who can put the ball in the back of the net. There's no, I don't think we need to, you know, heap yet more criticism on Richarlison. I think his time is done. It has to be done. Please be done. And so we need other people to come off the bench and do the business. And he's done it. Fair play to the lad. Let him continue along that and let him continue to get better because there's a really gifted player in there.
Agreed. Look, let's quickly hear from the goal scorer that did at one point put Spurs in front. Here is Mathys Tel speaking after the game.
Mathys, well played out there. A tough one to take today considering how hard we worked to get back into the game.
I mean, the reaction in second half was very positive. We showed a great mentality and, yeah, I always say we deserve to win this game because we gave a lot. So, yeah, it's for sure it's disappointed, but I always say we need to stay positive because we didn't lose. So, yeah, it's a good point to take. So, stay positive.
What happened in the second half? It felt like the team were very much on the front foot, had more sort of, perhaps a little bit more aggression, a little bit more appetite there.
Yeah, because when we play a team like Manchester United, we know that we need to give 100% energy. We need to do a lot defensively, offensively. So that's what we try to do in the second half, and that's why we scored the first goal and the second one. So it was a good reaction from the team.
I'm very aware that the feeling coming away from today, because we'd got ourselves back in front and then concede right at the end, there's a deflating feeling. But I do want to talk about your impact and the way that you came into the game and the way that you gave us a platform to build from, because it felt to me watching on that your goal lifted the stadium. Did you get that feeling on the pitch?
Yeah, I just listened to the stadium, so I was very happy because that was, I think, an important goal. So yeah, that's what I try to do every day, just try to work and help the team. And yeah, I'm very happy about the goal, and I will every day try to help the team.
Yeah, and I think fans see that, Mathys. I think they see that with you a lot, that you're prepared to keep working and keep trying in the face of setbacks. When you've had a couple of setbacks along the way, you seem to come back stronger from it. Where does that mentality come from within you?
I would say from my family and where I was born. Just about, doesn't matter what happened in your life, doesn't matter what emotion you feel, just stay positive, just try to fight every day, and you will get what you want to get. So yeah, always about fighting.
You'll now go away on international duty, but is there a moment now after today where the team will have a chance to be together, or is the next chance for you guys to talk and reflect, will that be after the international break?
Yeah, but we already talk in the dressing room. Like I said, we just want to stay positive because after the national break, we're going again, Champions League, Premier League, so we need to be ready. We don't have time to think about something else. Just make sure that we're ready and yeah, ready to go.
So there you go. That was Mathys Tel there. Speaks ever so well, I've got to say, Mathys Tel. Ever so well. Speaks a really, really good game. And like I say, hopefully for him, that gives him massive, massive confidence in terms of the next set of fixtures. Guys, look, we thought in that moment, Spurs are, maybe going to have to settle for a point. And, really cast the next kind of crazy cutting it ahead because Kevin Danso came on for Christian Romero. It looked like he picked up a late knock, but of course, Thomas Reiters confirmed that he is okay. United went down with 10 men for the following minutes as they made all their subs and Cecil have gone off injured. So you felt the fans were sniffing here on opportunity. They were sniffing a winner. That was the feeling inside that stadium. And Spurs did take the lead. I think like Tito said it so aptly that with Richarlison, had he got anything more on this ball than what he got, which was a whisker of it flicking off his head, Russ, it may not have been a goal, but it did go in for Spurs to put them ahead. But, let's be honest about it. Like I said earlier, we've got this horrendous situation around Spurs where Richarlison, every time that bloke takes off his shirt to celebrate what looks like a winner, we can't win the game. Keep the shirt on, Russ. Keep the shirt on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's an argument for that. It was interesting on the commentary on TNT. Ali McCoist, who knows quite a lot, obviously, about scoring goals, he said, absolutely meant it. Absolutely brilliant from Richarlison. So for anyone who is thinking that he didn't mean it and he hardly touched it and maybe it didn't touch him, Ali McCoy said that he thought it was a brilliant bit of play. And as it turned out, there we were, shirt off, 2-1 up, minutes to go.
Yeah.
4 or 5 minutes of stoppage time. There was 6 added on, wasn't there?
There was 6 added on. Yeah.
And we all thought, we're gonna do what we did to Burnley, but we're gonna win. But of course, nothing is certain in football, as we know. We all know what happened just a few minutes later.
We do know what happened a few minutes later, and that was the frustrating thing. Let's come on to what did happen a few minutes later, because we think we've done enough on, like I say, Richarlison really for the moment in terms of where we know we're at with him. And it all really come down to the fact that, Thomas Frank, for one of a better word, we have looked better at set pieces this season in terms of both attacking and defending them. But at the same time, there has been a little bit of a concern, definitely a little bit at, our defending of set pieces. I think it's been the second goal in the last few weeks we have conceded off a set piece. And the frustration would be it's last minute. You want to get players organised, and quite interesting what Thomas Frank did say in his post-match interview is that he doesn't think Romero being off the field made the difference for this goal because Romero wouldn't have actually been covering the far post, which is where Tottenham ended up conceding from. So, it's a killer blow. They force a corner. De Ligt heads it in the back post. Mount briefly puts off Vicario, who I think maybe should do better. Look, you'd argue it's the old Fergie time, really, in terms of when United got this goal. But again, I mean, Teach, you've been very praiseful recently of Vicario in the last few weeks, and he deserves his plaudits. But has he got to do better there, Teach, in terms of the goal and the ways he conceded?
Yes, he does. And listen, he's been more than worthy of the praise that I've heaped upon him over the last few weeks. I mean, he's kept us in so many games recently, made a series of absolutely outstanding saves. And yet there is still this glaring fragility in his game where he just cannot. When was the last time you remember a corner or a set piece coming into the box and he just kind of comes out and catches it? And the thing is that, yes, we've been caught out at the back post. It's interesting as well, just having a look at those stills that you shared, Rick, and how we don't have a player on the front post or the back post. I know that's a little old fashioned, but surely, when they only have 10 outfield players and we have, they only have 9 outfield players and we have 10.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they brought the goalkeeper up as well. So,
yep.
But that's still 10 players against 11 players. Put a big unit on the back post, especially when, their main goal threat from aerial pieces, which is Maguire, is off the pitch. And so really, if you had to go through that team, if you look at that still, who's going to nick you a header there? Number one on that list by a significant distance is De Ligt. So just pick him up. It's
unmarked.
Just
I mean,
unfathomable.
How is he unmarked at the back post, like you said there, Teach, when we've got
of
an extra man?
Of all the people that could be doubled, and put a unit on him, so Romero went off, and Frank's right. If you look at the still, if you look at where Danzo was standing, he was standing right in the middle of the 6-yard box, right? The still before. So when they were lined up, bravo, there he is.
Yeah.
Standing right in the middle of the 6-yard box. So you know what? Just say, Kevin, can you mark the other number 4? Can you go and mark that other unit that's going to try to get his head on this?
Yeah.
And that would have been it. Yes, Vicario was kind of falling backwards and everything. Come and claim that. So this is something that he really needs to work on. He needs to free himself from, it was only Mason Mount who was standing in front of him. Mason Mount, who's about 5'8", 160 pounds soaking wet. Just shrug him off and go and get the ball. He has to add that to his game, or like brother Russ said, and also my mate Dave has been bombarding us like, please talk about Vic. We're doing it right now for you, Dave. He has to add that to his game, or he may well find himself the topic of a conversation which he won't find terribly pleasing.
Yeah, again, I keep saying with Vicario that, I've given his flowers in the last few weeks, Luke, coming over to you. He's a problem. Look, he's probably quite far down the list of our problems right now, given our deficiencies in our attacking options. But the way the goal comes about, Luke, the manner of the fact that he's almost trying to poke the ball out. Is it a goalkeeping error, Luke, for you? Should he have kept this out?
Yeah, I think it's an error. I don't think everything's solely on him. I think the makeup, the setup of the team, and listen, football can be very, very complicated, but it can also be very, very simple. And I think T just got it bang on, where you sit there and go, how many danger men have they got? Who's their number one danger man? Let's make sure we're on him. And if we would have done that, then maybe this goal doesn't go in. So it is a tough one. And when you're talking about, I kept saying this over the summer, there's a list of priorities, and we're not going to be able to resolve every issue that we've got in this squad because there's too many of them to be able to do that all in one window. The other part to it is, where do we want to be as a club and where do we expect to be? So people were saying that we should finish potentially between 6th and 8th this season. That's roughly where I think a lot of people are saying where we should be at. So is Vicario a 6 to 8 keeper? Because you can't keep saying we should finish top 4, but all of the players that you think are more like top 6 or top 8 players.
Very fair point.
For me, I think he's a decent keeper in the Premier League. He is certainly not someone that I think if you're looking to get into the Champions League year after year, people will be looking at and going, yeah, we'd take Vicario there. So it depends on where we're at.
I hear that. I'm going to jump in for a second. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. The thing is, man, they're like number 9s now. Like
Mhm.
that goal, brother. They're so rare.
You're
Rick
right. To
said
get a
before,
decent,
it took United
Well, look at United saying to get this
4-5
Lamans
shovels
guy.
on the deck.
We've already seen
I mean,
Lamans
I
for
agree
5
with what
minutes.
you're saying.
Yeah.
They're so rare. They're so rare.
Well, they are, and also it depends. It's slightly more difficult with a goalkeeper in terms of defensive frailties, right? Like if you've got a central midfielder doesn't cover enough good distance, put him with another central midfielder that does. Can't really do that with a goalkeeper. But what we can do is make sure that the people around him are more dominant in the air, so that he doesn't have to come out, say for instance, or something like that.
I think we have to accept that the frailties that he does have might be there for good.
Yeah.
I do think he can improve because again, he seems very strong mentally, right? So, you know, why don't goalkeepers ever kind of travel laterally, you know, up and down their line anymore? They only kind of want to move out vertically, you know, like either out of their goal line into the 6-yard box to claim. You can also go laterally up and down. You can go near post if you think it's going there, go far post if you think it's going there. He doesn't do that. So that's something that he could do because it doesn't take much physical ability or heightened agility. You know, I think he could add that to his game for sure.
I think we also need to make this clear, you know, in the build-up to that goal, Russ, just to be very clear, there was also, I mean, Bentancur just couldn't pass the ball 5 yards that actually led to the corner. And then also you've got the point where, you know, Johnson left De Ligt, which is a crime really in the first place. Having you know, Johnson marking De Ligt seems like a complete mismatch. So whilst we're sitting here saying with Vicario, rightly he's at fault for the guy, in my opinion, there's things that led up to that maybe if obviously let that goal happen as well. It's not just all on Vicario, it's the movement beforehand that happens for the corner, and also what happens at that corner to allow Vicario to be in a position where he doesn't keep the ball out, right?
Yeah. Look, there's weakness in the camp in one or two areas, and I think the goalkeeper is one of them. We saw it last season on many occasions, not coming and claiming the ball, punching when it was unnecessary. And I think what TJ and Luke have said is absolutely right about goalkeepers. So it's up to the club that if they do want to compete in the top 4 and challenge for the Premier League, as Luke said, sadly, Vicario would not be a goalkeeper that you could go forward with. I mean, that lot up the road had Ramsdale, who was a good shot stopper, but they got somebody in who was 20-30% better.
Agree.
And it turns out, hey, guess what? He was. And he doesn't let many in. I know he let in 2 tonight, but it's the difference.
Yep. Yeah,
it really is.
You're right. Look, I think we know it on this show. I mean, the reality is where we are right now. There's things to fix for sure, but we're going to yet another international break. I think the only thing we can try and be happy about is the fact that we don't go in the back of a defeat. Yes, it's gutting. Yes, it's frustrating. It is gut punching to lose 2 points in the space of a minute. But I think at the same time, Luke made a very good point, and I think TG said it as well, that I think the way the game was going at 1-0, you probably would have taken a draw. But it's a frustration that we've actually gone ahead and allowed the game to slip away in the final moments, which makes it utterly frustrating, which again means we've got to sit on this now for 2 weeks and just a task of a North London derby coming up against Arsenal away. So there's no easy games in this league. I mean, Thomas...
No hiding, mate. No hiding.
That positively.
Yes.
There was talk of Decky potentially being back after the international break. No?
I don't think it's too soon for him to...
I think so as well. I mean, listen, I don't think, you know, of course he doesn't get close to starting. He probably... You know, could we bring him on for like 10 minutes here and there? You know, is it that?
Well, I've got to say on that point, we've gone from Solanke, who obviously they made the decision very quickly on him to not go with the surgery, right? So they've obviously decided not to go with the surgery in the hope he was going to come back. He then obviously wasn't going to come back. So then obviously they had the surgery. We've now got Thomas Frank suggesting that he's hopeful he'll be back before 2026. So, I mean, like Russ said at the start of the show, there's no
cagey,
way...
wasn't he? He was cagey.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way Solanke, I think, you're going to see anywhere near the player you would hope to see probably before January. And by that point, you're in the second half of the season. So there is a lot of things that need to happen and need to be fixed, certainly. And Thomas Frank has to now hope, as these players go away on these national duty, we don't get any more injuries. I think we're up to 11 so far, and potentially 12, depending on the circumstance of Mwani's scan, which is on Sunday for those that have missed that news. Despite Thomas Frank confirming in his post-match, he's not concerned by Mwani having an injury. He picked up a jaw injury, and that is going to be assessed on Sunday. So there you go. Listen, we shall see what the next soap opera of Spurs brings us. These wonderful gentlemen will be on the journey with us. I want to say a massive thank you as always to telling it as it is. The voice that feels like honey being poured down your throat. Broadcaster Russ Williams, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Lovely to see you, fellas. Thank you for watching and listening.
Absolutely. Just a small task of Arsenal to come, Russ. So go and put yourself away for 2 weeks and get ready.
Well, we've got to show the spirit of Sunderland in our fight when we get there, haven't we?
Who thought we were going to say that going into the November
well,
international
listen, they
break?
beat Chelsea at the Bridge as well. But to be serious, it isn't a very good league, I don't think.
No, it's not. But
this
and that's
season
the frustration,
Russ.
Russ.
Gives
That
us
is
hope.
the frustration. Yeah, you're right. That's a frustration. Teach, thank you so much. We're going to put Teach firmly back on the sun lounger for a couple of weeks. Let him work on that tan, and we'll bring him off. And
Thank goodness.
Luke's been thrown in again like Archie Gray to a season. We'll see more of Luke for sure. Thank you so much as always, guys, for your support for the show. Keep liking, keep subscribing, and hyping now is the new phrase. Keep hyping and liking and subscribing to the show. Luke of Spotlight on Spurs, make sure you check him out. Russ and T, they'll all be back with us very, very soon. Guys, keep safe, keep well, keep the faith. As Russ will be telling you, keep the faith. Thank you, support as always. And as always, as we say, come on, you Spurs.